What is the scariest part of Half-Life? If we take the entire Half-Life franchise as a whole, then general consensus would probably say the Ravenholm chapter of Half-Life 2 is the scariest part, and I agree, it is pretty scary. Another hot contender would probably be Jeff from Half-Life Alyx. He's also kind of a creepy guy. But for me, thinking back, the scariest part lies in Half-Life 1. In this scene in particular. You probably all know it. Now, this scene in itself is not the creepiest. Everything is well lit and you as the player are perfectly safe. But put yourself into my shoes. Let me set the scene for you. It's the turn of the millennium, and you're a little boy, 9 or 10 years old, and your parents brought you along for a dinner party at their friends. Their friends have sons too, one of them an older boy who does have a computer. He's a couple of years older than you, so he has those cool video games, and back then, remember, we are talking about the year 2000, Half-Life was a pretty hot thing. It just came out over a year ago, and he's playing it, and you can look over his shoulder and watch. It's dark in the room, only slightly illuminated by the CRT screen, and you joined watching as he's moving through the office complex. You saw him take out a few headcrabs here and there, confidently destroying them easily. But he's low on health and low on ammo, so it's a struggle forward. Then he makes it to the elevator, and you ride into the next level. And there we are.
For God's sake, open the silo door! They're coming for us! It's our only way out! Oh my God, we're doomed!
The sheer chaos and horror of this scene, well, that did it for me. We know we had to go through the silo door, that's what the older boy told me, so I thought, man, oh, here we are. They are opening the door and no, they're not opening it. He's screaming for his life, for God's sake, open the silo door. And the button to rescue is just there, behind the glass, and the man able to push it is pulled into the ventilation shaft by that horrible monster, and then his guts spill out of the shaft onto the floor. And the scientist runs off in panic, getting destroyed by the mine. When I was a little boy, I found this scene profoundly scary. Not because the scene itself was super creepy, because it conveyed to me the sheer sense of panic in the people around in this scene and it kind of the looming threat ahead of what's to come. More, maybe smarter monsters. And video game-wise, the scene is actually pretty smart. It's brilliant foreshadowing. It tells you exactly you need to reach this button. The entire level is just basically finding the way out of this ventilation shaft. I told this childhood story of mine to a couple of friends, and then they shared their impressions of Half-Life, what they found scary when they were kids. And one common thing they all talked about is how unnerving they found the feeling of isolation. Not only that you are mostly on your own when playing, it's also the entire location. It's a gigantic complex underground cut off from the rest of the world. And talking about that, that's a feeling that carried over all the way to Zen. While Valve's version of Zen is usually not held in such high regard nowadays, because, well, in comparison to the Black Mesa version, it's, gameplay-wise, just not as strong, the feeling of isolation you get there is still pretty strong. The Black Mesa version of Zen looks pretty. It's great gameplay-wise, and it's visually pleasing. It almost looks inviting. It's an alien beauty. And well, Valve's version of Zen, due to technical limitations of the time, it looks very barren, very simplistic, but that also underlines its, unwelcoming nature. Everything tells you, you are not supposed to be here. You are the alien in this place, and the feeling of isolation gets even stronger. Everything human you meet in Zen is dead, are remains of people who died there. So, this feeling of you are not supposed to be there gets even stronger, and then adding to that, some alien entity is communicating with you telepathically. So it's even stronger. And while we are talking about feelings and stuff connected to our mind, due to the rather bare-bones graphics of the original Half-Life, your mind fills in a lot of the blanks. There is body horror, but it's very, very, well, limited. There are no detailed depictions of guts spilling out, no detailed wounds and stuff. Some of the models you would see in Half-Life 2 are pretty disgusting and pretty detailed in their horrid depiction of wounds. Just think of the burnt corpse model. In Half-Life 1, this wasn't possible, so a lot of the stuff that is actually horrible just goes on in your mind. And depending on the state of your mind, that can be less or more horrible. It all depends on how messed up you are. And lastly, one of the horrible or rather scary moments one of my friends shared is that one time you get knocked out and you lose control.
I see it. Alright, we got him.
In Half-Life, up until that point, you were always in control. Even when you couldn't leave a certain room, you still could move around and look around freely. You were always the man of action. You were always the entity in control. But in that one case, when you get jumped by the soldiers, you are out. You are at their mercy. And when this happened for the very first time in Half-Life, you felt lost. You felt helpless. And that's a whole different kind, a special kind of scary. Yes, Half-Life can be conventionally scary, with the classic horror tropes, jump scares with head grabs and, of course, the aforementioned Ravenholm in Half-Life 2. That's more classic scary. From a modern perspective, especially Half-Life 1 isn't that scary anymore. Many of the elements that we found scary as kids are, I guess, to a modern audience, maybe even laughable. You have to put yourself into the position of someone who experiences Half-Life for the first time, and in the context of the time, many of the things seen were completely new.
No! Get it off me! Get it off!
Elaborate scripted sequences, and yes, those were elaborate for the time, is something you really didn't see in first-person shooters back then. That whole first-person cutscene where you lose control and you're at the mercy of the soldiers, that was a novum, that was brand new, and so it had a more profound impact on the player. Nowadays, of course, there are so many more creepy and horrible horror games out there, but I think the simplicity of Half-Life, in its own way, it can still hold up. I guess you could compare the experience that many people had with Half-Life Alyx to what I had when I was a little boy with the very first Half-Life. It was the first time I saw something like that, so it had a big impact. Just like playing a horror game for the first time in VR. This scene where you have to get the flashlight from the hanging zombie over there, kinda scary in VR. And I know, on the screen like this, it doesn't come across as that scary, but when you're actually there, in VR, yeah, this is super immersive. This would have been sensory overload for 9-year-old me. So I am absolutely curious. What are the moments of Half-Life that you found scary? From which Half-Life game is it? 1, 2, one of the expansions? Or maybe even a mod? Or maybe you don't find Half-Life scary at all, find it laughable, and tell me you much more prefer Outlast. I mean, nowadays there are more horror franchises and games than you can shake a stick at, so I'm looking forward to what you guys are writing in the comments section. And as always, the people who get the opportunity to write something in the comments first are our supporters on Patreon, to whom I'm tremendously thankful. Those people are Lone Wolf, Zat Gladys, Wrapped in Glass, Cookie, Reval556, Tome, Rainbow Flash, Grizzlyvia, Strange Module, Cop Fighter, Inter, CJ Surrett, Sir K, Ram Gilama, Whiskey, Christoph, MTD, Hub, Leggy Boy, Daniel, Freylem, Crony XS, Deovio, iMentrix, Armon, Aussie Loco, Frog on Unicycle Vape, Sidonai, Bobcat Racer, Golden Fox, Pocket, Mama Ghosty, Yellow Jello, Duek, and Maki. A big thank you for your support. To them and to you, thanks for watching. So, see you guys next time. Until then, have a nice day, and as always, goodbye and guten Tag.